Hello, third graders. I am so excited to tell you about our new unit. This is lesson 1. We're learning about the Viking Age. And today's lesson is called Who Were the Vikings? Here are some words that you'll hear in the read aloud. Banished means sent away and not allowed to return to a place or country. Ferocious means fierce or brutal or wild. Fjords are long, narrow inlets of the sea located between steep cliffs. Glaciers are large and slow-moving bodies of ice and snow that form around mountains and valleys. Plundered is a verb, so it's something that is done. Stolen or taken goods. Raids are sudden attacks, often involving the stealing or taking of goods. So what do you know? Who remembers what a civilization is? We've talked about civilizations before. Civilization is people living in civilizations have developed cities and villages, have writing systems, have leaders and laws, practice religions, grow their own food by farming, and have different people doing different jobs. What ancient civilization have you learned about recently? Right? Do you remember talking about ancient Rome, the civilization of ancient Rome? How do we gain information about these ancient civilizations? Archaeologists work to find artifacts that help us better understand ancient civilizations. So, in this domain, we will be learning about another ancient civilization that existed a few hundred years or so after the ancient Roman civilization, the Viking civilization. This is a map of the places that played a role in the Vikings' history. So look at this map. We have two oceans, the Atlantic Ocean and the Arctic Ocean. And what we're studying, the Vikings, takes place about where they meet. We're going to talk about these countries here. And this is Canada right here. And then we're way down here in the United States, below Canada. The Vikings were the warriors of the Norse people. The word Viking comes from a word in the Old Norse language, vikingur, which means pirate, sea raider, or attacker, and emphasizes that is exactly what these men were. The Vikings were part of an even larger culture or group of men, women, and children called the Norse. Even though only some men of the Norse civilization became Vikings, the Vikings' impact on history was so significant that the Norse civilization is frequently referred to as the Viking civilization. In the time of the Vikings, it's called the Viking Age. The word Norse comes from the word north. The Norse people lived in an area of Europe called Scandinavia. Let's look at a world map or globe. We're going to find the United States and point to the continent of Europe. Locate the present-day countries of Norway, Sweden, and Denmark on the poster. These 3 countries make up the area we refer to today as Scandinavia, the area where the Norse people lived and from where the Vikings came. Scandinavia is a large area surrounded by the North Atlantic and Arctic Oceans, as well as the Baltic, North, and Norwegian seas. The Norse people were known by other names. So let's go back to the map. So like I said, the United States would be down here. Europe is over here. This is Europe. We have England right here, and Ireland and Scotland, and up here in the north is Scandinavia. The Nordics had Norse people had other names. Some of these names included Nordic people, Norsemen, or Northmen. These people were also named more specifically for where they lived, such as Norwegians if they came from Norway, Danes if they were from Denmark, or Swedes if they were from Sweden. That's where some of my ancestors came from, was Sweden. For the sake of accuracy, only the warriors who are Vikings or on raids will be referred to as Vikings in this domain. The larger culture or the civilization the Vikings were a part of will be referred to as the Norse or Nordic people, the Viking people, or the people of the Viking Age. The Viking people were not one group who lived under the rule of one king. They traveled to and settled in many different places. Although it is true that the Viking warriors were feared because they would often sneak up on others and steal their goods, there is much more to learn about the culture and history of the ancient civilization they belonged to. So you're going to learn about the daily life of the Viking people, the different jobs they had, their explorations, their history, and other cultural practices. One of the components of a civilization is religion, or a set of beliefs and practices. The Norse believed in many beings called gods and goddesses. Can you identify what other civilizations you have learned about that worship multiple gods and goddesses? Right when we talked about Rome, you may have in other classes have heard about the Egyptians or the Greeks. They all worshipped more than one god. So they were called polytheistic. The prefix poly means many, and the word theistic means related to a god or goddesses. Remember, if you believe in one god, then you are monotheistic. Mono means one, and theistic means God. The word age means a period of time in history that had certain characteristics or attributes. The Viking Age was a period of time in history marked by the exploration, trading, and raiding of the Viking warriors. A long time ago, more than 1,000 years in the past, the Vikings were the lords of the seas. Vikings were famous as ferocious warriors who were feared by people because of their seaborne raids. Vikings were an important part of a Norse civilization that also had farmers, fishermen, shipbuilders, craftsmen, traders, explorers, settlers, and poets. As you heard earlier, the Vikings came from a part of the world we now call Scandinavia. To the north, the Scandinavian peninsula is bordered by the Arctic Ocean. To the west, it is the Norwegian Sea, and to the south, it is the Baltic and the North Sea. These seas are part of the North Atlantic Ocean. As you can see, the Vikings were surrounded by water. If a civilization lives near the sea, what kind of food do you expect them to eat a lot of? Probably fish. The Vikings traveled westward across the Atlantic Ocean to North America and eastward to Russia and beyond. They even traveled as far as Persia, which is called Iran today. They left a deep imprint on many parts of Europe and surrounding islands, and they established settlements in Iceland, Greenland, and Vinland, which is now called Newfoundland. Some of those places still bear the names they were given by the Vikings more than 1,000 years ago. Viking expansion was made possible by their magnificent longships. The longships were icons of the Viking Age. The sight of longships struck fear into the hearts of others, but they were highly valued by the Vikings, who celebrated the ships in poetry, gave them as gifts, and even used them in funeral rituals. The exact causes of the Viking expansion during this time remain mysterious. Some possible reasons include the following: competition for resources, the lure of wealth and resources in Europe and other places, an increasing number of people in need of more food, changes with rulers, warfare, and a desire to win fame and fortune. What we know for certain is that the Vikings used their magnificent longships and other types of ships you will learn about to explore, trade, raid, and invade new lands. When the Vikings first ventured away from Scandinavia in their longships, they raided and plundered foreign settlements, terrifying the local inhabitants. Vikings were also called Norsemen, which means Northmen. This name came from people they raided who were living in England and other parts of Europe. After these raids, the Vikings returned home again with their plundered goods. Over time, however, the Vikings began to settle in and sometimes conquer the lands they had raided and plundered. The Vikings, or Norsemen, began regular raids on Ireland, England, and other parts of Europe, including present-day Spain, France, Germany, and Russia. Viking warriors were known to kill without mercy and would steal anything of value, including people who could be used as slaves. So look at this map. So the Vikings came from Scandinavia, which is up here. We have Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. And they would travel to different lands like Scotland, England, Ireland. They'd come down here towards where Germany is today, and Spain and France. If the Vikings were in Scandinavia and they raided Ireland, England, and other parts of Europe, how do you think they got to those places? They definitely needed ships, right, to go over the water. However, Vikings didn't just raid and steal, they also traded. Their cargo ships, carrying items from their home like fish, furs, timbers, walrus, ivory, and hides, and woolen cloth, sailed on major rivers across Europe and into Russia. They traded these items for silver or for things they did not have in their homeland. Did you know that the Vikings set foot in what is now called North America long before Christopher Columbus did? As you heard earlier, after sailing to Iceland, the Vikings traveled all the way to the large island of Greenland, and then to the much smaller island of Vinland, which is now called Newfoundland. Newfoundland is a part of the North American country of Canada. The Vikings were able to sail to these faraway places because they were such expert shipbuilders and navigators. To start at what most historians believe is the beginning, a Norwegian chieftain named Ingolfur Arnarson, who would have been called just Ingolf, and his family left Norway and became the first known Viking settlers in Iceland. Although the interior of Iceland is mountainous and contains glaciers, the coastal area is good for farming. Ingolf and his family decided that life would be better for them in Iceland than in their homeland, Norway. So they sailed from Norway all the way to Iceland. Before long, many other Vikings settled in Iceland too, and a farmstead known as Reykjavik was established. One such settler was a man named Thorvald Asvaldsson. Thorvald had been banished from Norway for committing a murder, so he traveled with his family to live in Iceland. So we can see Reykjavik on the map. Right there. I can see it in Iceland. Thorvald had a son who went by the name Eric the Red. Eric the Red was born in Norway, but because of his father's banishment, he grew up in Iceland. As an adult, Eric the Red was also convicted of murder and banished from Iceland for 3 years. Eric sailed west from Iceland. On his voyage, Eric the Red came to a huge yet little-known island that he later named Greenland. Fjords are long, narrow inlets of the sea, passages between high, steep cliffs that have been formed by glaciers. Why would a name like Greenland encourage people to settle there? During his banishment, Eric the Red spent several years exploring Greenland, identifying good settlement sites. Although much of Greenland is covered in ice, parts of the southwest, with deep fjords, valleys, and rivers, proved to be good for Norse farming and settlement. We are told that Eric called this new place Greenland in the hope that the name would encourage people to settle there. Not long after settling in Greenland, the Vikings began to wonder what was farther west. Eric the Red's son, Leif Erikson, was one such person. Leif had once heard about a land to the west of Greenland from another sailor. Eventually, Leif set off in search of this land. As a result of his travels, Leif Erikson became recognized as the first known European to set foot in what was later called North America, establishing a settlement that Leif named Vinland and that today is called Newfoundland. So you can see Ingolf, Eric the Red, and Leif Erikson in their travels and where they settled. Leif discovered that there were already people living in Newfoundland, the Inuit. The Inuit were not pleased with having intruders. Leif's lack of supplies and the threats from the indigenous groups caused Leif and his men to leave Newfoundland. On his return journey to Greenland, Leif rescued a shipwrecked Viking crew and was given all the riches in the ship's cargo, earning him the nickname Leif the Lucky. The Inuit are Native Americans who inhabited and still live in the Arctic regions of Greenland and North America. The Inuit are, in addition to passing on their history, poets told about the Viking gods. As you heard earlier, the Viking people had their own mythology to explain the happenings of the world. In Norse mythology, Asgard was the home of the gods, and it was there that Odin, the ruler of Asgard, and his queen Frigga lived. There are many gods in Asgard, but perhaps the most famous one was Odin's son, Thor, the mighty god of thunder. This passing down of history by telling stories is called an oral tradition. Early on, the Viking people did not write their history down, but later many of the sages were preserved in writing. Inside Asgard was Valhalla, a palace where Vikings went if they had fought and died bravely in battle. It was considered a great honor to go to Valhalla. 540 doors opened up into the palace, and through each door, 800 Viking warriors could walk side by side. Vikings also believed in the power of magic. They believed in giants, ghosts, zombies, dwarfs, elves, trolls, and dragons. The Vikings believed in good spirits and bad spirits. The Viking Age lasted around 500 years, and over time came to an end as the Vikings went on fewer and fewer raids to other lands. Their dragon-headed longships, filled with ferocious Viking warriors, eventually stopped sailing across the oceans. Several factors may have caused the Viking Age to come to an end, including Europeans building hard-to-raid fortresses and castles, more Norse owning their own small farms and needing to stay home to tend their farms, some Norse practicing Christianity, a religion which teaches it is wrong to steal from and hurt others. Even though the Viking Age ended, the Norse people continued on and still exist today. They are known as Danes, Swedes, Norwegians, Icelanders, and Greenlanders. Although the Viking Age did not last as long as other civilizations, its Norse sagas and mythology forever remain with us, allowing us to learn about the Vikings' history, culture, and tales of adventure. So who were the Vikings? The Vikings were warriors and sea raiders who were part of a larger Norse civilization that also included farmers, fishermen, shipbuilders, craftsmen, traders, explorers, settlers, and poets, or skalds, living in Scandinavia and surrounding areas. Who can show me where the Viking people lived? What is the name of the place where they lived? Can you find it on the map? They lived in Scandinavia. What present-day countries make up Scandinavia? Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. What oceans surround Scandinavia? The North Atlantic Ocean and the Arctic Ocean. What seas surround Scandinavia? The Baltic Sea, the North Sea, and Norwegian Sea. How did living by the sea influence the Viking people's lives? They fished and relied on the sea for food. They became excellent sailors and shipbuilders. They sailed through fjords to the ocean to go to other places in order to explore, trade, raid, and settle. People living to the south of Scandinavia called the Vikings Northmen or Norsemen. What does Northmen or Norsemen mean, and why were they called this name? Norsemen means northern men. The Vikings lived north of people living in England and other parts of Europe. Who are Eric the Red and Leif Erikson, or Leif the Lucky, and what is their importance? They were Viking explorers who expanded the Viking settlement. Eric the Red settled in Greenland. Leif Erikson, or Leif the Lucky, settled in Newfoundland. The Vikings appeared ferocious as they raided and plundered foreign settlements, but they had more peaceful ways of making a living. How else did they make a living? They farmed and fished. They also traded things like furs, timber, walrus ivory, walrus skins, wool, and iron. Compare and contrast the Viking civilization and the ancient Roman civilization. How are the Viking people similar to the ancient Romans? How are they different? They both believed in many gods and myths. Both the Viking people and Romans traveled and settled in new lands through force. Both had slaves. The Viking people were known for their ships, and the Romans were known for their architecture. Romans lived in a warm climate with some fertile land, whereas Viking people lived in a cold climate with glaciers and limited fertile land. The Romans had written traditions, whereas the people of the Viking Age had mostly oral traditions in passing down their histories. Our word for the day is ferocious. In the read aloud, you heard Vikings were famous as ferocious warriors who were feared by people because of their seaborne raids. Say the word ferocious. Ferocious means fierce, brutal, or wild. With a powerful slash of his sword, the courageous knight was able to take down the ferocious dragon. Draw a creature with features that would make it ferocious. This creature can be real or fictional. Okay, so I want you to draw a ferocious creature, and then you can share it with the class at our afternoon meet. Good job, third graders. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about the Vikings, and we're going to hear some Viking stories as we do this unit.